Summer is the greatest season by a long shot. That's a hill I'll die on any day. My love for the summer doesn't revolve around partying or drinking as you may expect, but nature. Warmer weather and the outdoors are inseparable in my opinion, and I guarantee you that when the heat rolls through, I spend more hours outside than inside. It was a warm night in mid-June a few summers ago when this happened. I was 17 or 18 at the time. For context, there's a massive nature preserve near my house. When I say massive, I mean it. It's close to 1,000 acres in size. To this day, there are still parts of it that I'm positive I haven't explored. 2 of my friends and I agreed to spend a night camping in those woods. Technically, camping there was strictly forbidden and borderline illegal, but we figured that there was no chance someone would catch us in this dense forest. We'd just have to trek as deeply as possible. Chuck was the camping fanatic of the group. I'm telling you, this kid loved cosplaying as a Boy Scout and probably knew close to 100 different knots. Our other friend Jackson always supplied the drinks. If we were sober, he was unhappy. That's just how things went when Jackson was involved. I remember the feeling of the gentle summer breeze blowing through my hair as the 3 of us packed up Jackson's car. The weather was ideal, not too cold, not too hot. A few beers later, the 3 of us found ourselves lugging camping equipment through the woods at like 11:30. I can't lie, I was feeling the alcohol start to hit me as we marched along. Chuck always carried this industrial-grade flashlight with him, so the darkness of the forest wasn't much of an issue. As much as I enjoyed the outdoors though, traversing through thick woods at this hour was a bit creepy, even with Chuck's flashlight on hand. After close to half an hour of straight walking, the 3 of us found ourselves in a small, flat clearing that was an ideal spot to set up camp. We pitched our tent as per Chuck's instruction and set our chairs up. The fire was the next step. Chuck once again took the lead on this, and after a few more minutes, we had a pretty decent fire going. Jackson reached into his bag and tossed me another drink. He then grabbed his JBL speaker and started playing some music. The vibe was perfect, and we must have been talking and drinking for a good 2 hours. We were all pretty drunk at that point, and I could tell the other guys were just about ready to pack it up for the night. Jackson turned the music down and started collecting discarded beer cans. Just then, a deafening whistle pierced the silence. I nearly jumped out of my seat, going from drunken haze to high alert in a matter of seconds. I don't know how to describe it. The whistle was abnormally loud, but still sounded distant. Jackson quickly shut the speaker off, and the 3 of us sat in silence as we exchanged concerned looks. I could feel my heartbeat pounding through my chest. We sat there, frozen in place for what seemed like forever, listening intently to our surroundings. But there was nothing. It almost seemed quieter now than it had when we first got there. Like eerily quiet. Not even the normal wood sounds you come to anticipate. I used that time to play my memory of the whistle back in my head. It definitely wasn't an animal's noise. The best way I can describe it is a standard whistle you'd hear at a ballpark. Chuck finally broke the silence, quietly urging us to pack up and leave. Jackson and I disagreed with that plan though. We might risk encountering whoever made the noise, which I was beyond terrified of. It was past 3 a.m. at this point. An encounter this late would only mean trouble. Chuck hypothesized that whoever made that noise was probably aware of our presence, which was a chilling thought. I didn't know what to do. On one hand, staying put violated every survival instinct I had. Packing up and leaving at this hour didn't seem like a much better option either though. We finally agreed to wait it out. I went to put the fire out, but Chuck cautioned me against it, saying that a fire would repel any dangerous animals. Only then did the true gravity of the situation smack me in the face. We were literally miles away from any civilization, it was 3 a.m., and there was an unknown entity somewhere in the darkness. Another 10 minutes or so passed, and we had resumed talking, but at a much lower volume with no music. I don't think any of us felt safe going to sleep just yet though. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. Something small flew over the darkness of Jackson's shoulder and landed directly in the fire. It was a firecracker. I screamed bloody murder as it started sparkling in the fire, and Chuck cursed as he sprung up out of his chair and bolted into the darkness. Jackson and I scrambled to follow, leaving all of our stuff behind. We caught up with Chuck, whose flashlight was beaming wildly through the woods as he frantically sprinted. We ran until we couldn't anymore, and Jackson keeled over and threw up. Chuck shut the light off and the three of us stood there, panting, trying to figure out if we were being followed. To my surprise, it didn't seem like anyone followed us. I don't think I've ever been so afraid, though. Why in the world would someone have done that? We needed to figure out what to do. Jackson wanted to just find our way out of the woods and never come back, but Chuck was reluctant to leave all of his camping gear behind. Plus, he reminded us the fire was still active. I was dumbfounded. How could he be concerned with forest fires after what had just happened? Eventually, I agreed with Chuck that we should at least check on the site. After all, no one had actually chased us, so there was a slight possibility that whoever threw that firecracker was just playing a cruel prank. Chuck was a navigational expert and was actually able to retrace our footsteps. I could make out the glow of the fire as we quietly approached. Before I could get any closer, though, Jackson put a hand in front of me and pointed with a horrified look on his face. I strained my eyes to make out the sight in the distance. What I saw is probably the most terrifying thing I'd ever laid eyes on. There were 3 people sitting motionlessly in our chairs like statues. The one whose face I could see looked lifeless and his mouth was hung open. I was afraid to move. What were they even doing? I thought, realizing that they weren't even talking. This was not normal. The 3 of us watched for a little while longer before deciding to back off. We turned to leave, but Jackson's foot clipped a rock, causing him to curse in frustration. Within seconds, the glow from the fire abruptly went dark, as if it had been covered with a cloak. It was freakishly fast. We didn't stick around another second. We again sprinted away from the site, but this time we could hear footsteps crashing behind us. We didn't stop this time. We bolted out of the woods and ran all the way to Jackson's car. By some miracle, we weren't followed out of the woods. None of us spoke on the drive back, each of us lost in our thoughts. The next day, Chuck insisted we return to the site in the daylight to collect his belongings. Jackson wanted nothing to do with that, but I agreed to accompany Chuck. After some searching, we eventually found the site, which looked mostly untouched. That is, until we got a little closer and noticed the putrid smell coming from Chuck's tent. He unzipped it, and we found a dead, rotting rat. It was sickening. I took the hint, and haven't been back to that preserve since.